It all begins with two girls on the top of a building watching it engulfed in flames. One of them, the pink hair one, confesses that she had never understood love until that moment when she finally understood its meaning. In an unexpected instant, the smaller girl lunges towards the girl with pink hair, and they together from the top of the building, thus starting his love story with Shio. In the city, our protagonist, called Satu Matsuzaka, is on her way to work, and in that, a boy approaches her to confess his feelings, but she kindly rejects him, saying that she has already given her heart to someone else. As she walks away with her friend Shoko, the boy's friends approach him, making it clear to him that she enjoyed playing with boys' hearts. Later, in the workplace locker room, the protagonist confesses to her friend that she is in love and that she's already living with her couple, but she needs to find another job to have more money. Her friend suggests that she must continue playing with men since she thinks that the protagonist's boyfriend is a lazy man. After that, they then go to work together. Upon arriving home, the protagonist is greeted by Shio, a little girl who is the love of the protagonist. She takes care of her, bathes her, and plays with her. At the end of the day, they sleep together, and our protagonist believes that this is what real love feels like and that she is in love with Shio. The next day, she starts her new job at a restaurant and everything goes too well. She meets a boy named Mitsubishi, who offers his help to her if she would need it. The only bad thing here is that she will now come later at home. The days go by, and Mitsubishi confesses his feelings to the protagonist, but she rejects him for the same reason. She has already given her heart to someone else. The girls at her workplace tell her that Mitsubishi is a good guy, but when she confesses to them that she is already in love, they all congratulate her and tell her that the guys at work always end up fighting with the manager. That night, when she leaves the workplace, Satu sees that Mitsubishi enters a room along with the manager of the restaurant. The next day, Satu notices that the boy doesn't show up to work, which leaves her puzzled. The manager blames her, telling her that because she broke his heart, he won't go back to work ever again. And for this reason, she now has to cover him and do his work. Several days pass like this, and even our protagonist realizes that one of the girls is treating her badly. This girl tells her that she was the one who exposed Mitsubishi with the manager, and that if she says something, all will get worse for her, because she is the most senior employee. When she arrives home and sees that Shio got to sleep on the floor while waiting for her, she realizes that if she stays there, she will drive crazy. Finally, payday arrives, and our protagonist realizes that she has been paid less despite doing extra work, so she goes to confront the issue with the manager. When she enters her office, the manager tells her that her salary was reduced because she caused a lot of problems. The main issue, according to the manager, is when Mitsubishi told Satu that he loved her, because she says that in the restaurant only the manager can be loved by everyone, not an employee like the protagonist. Satu, at that moment, realizes what happened, so she tells the manager that she can feel the heavy atmosphere and what she did to Mitsubishi, so that she will go to ask him if he is okay. But the manager warns her that she won't be able to talk to him, and at that instant, the girl discovers that the manager has trapped the boy. For this reason, the protagonist decides to record the manager confessing that she is the boy. Cornered in this way, the manager asks her what she wants, but our protagonist is only interested in being paid what she truly owes her. Then she opens the closet door of the office and finds the boy tied up and crying. On her way home, our protagonist feels so sad and depressed, but when she arrives home and is greeted by Shio, all those horrible feelings are forgotten. Shortly after, she puts the little girl to sleep and enters a room with a password. There, we see the walls and trash bags filled with blood, revealing that those are the previous owners of the house. Furthermore, someone is posting wanted posters with Shio's picture on the street. Meanwhile, in her house, our protagonist sits among those bags, welcoming us to her happy sugar life. Chapter 2. Now we see Satu on a bridge about to throw the blood-filled trash bags into the river, while thinking that she must protect her life with the help of Shio, and thus learn about love. However, she feels like someone is watching her, so she quickly leaves the place. The next day in class, one of her friends shares her love disappointment, and they start fantasizing about a romance with Professor Katamikawa, since he is single. Suddenly, he calls the protagonist and mentions to her that he called her home yesterday to discuss her grades, but no one answered. She explains that she was working and her aunt was out, so her professor offers his help by holding her hands. However, the protagonist tells him that she has stopped playing with men and that she is now in love, so she doesn't need the help of any man. But thinking seriously about it, she asks him to help her with something, since she feels that someone is stalking her. That evening, at her other job, she shares the same concern with Shoko, who worries because a past client used to harass Satu before. The supervisor of that job tells them that the guy who will take care of the place and act as a bodyguard will arrive soon. Once she leaves work on her way back home, she feels happy, thinking about how Shio completes her heart, but suddenly she realizes that someone is following her, so she runs away. It turns out to be the same client who used to pursue her. However, Satu enters an alley and her professor appears, revealing himself as the stalker, expressing his feelings for her and what he intends to do. Afterward, he holds her hand and proposes going to her home to ruin the person she lives with. Our protagonist starts feeling that bitterness again and finally triggers an alarm in her bag, causing all the nearby house's lights to turn on, which makes Kitamikoa leave. Upon arriving home, she feels bad about the situation she experienced, so she asks Shio for help, and the little girl gives her a kiss, making that bitter feeling disappear. The protagonist believes that this is love, and because of it, she is determined to do anything to anyone who gets in her way. The next day, Satu goes to the professor's house just as he bids farewell to his wife and child. Our protagonist starts undressing in front of him. Kitamikoa's wife comes out cheerfully, thinking she is a diligent student when she is stopped by the professor, who is nervous, and he asks Satu to speak on the way. Once outside, he tells her that for him, love means having multiple women, but Satu threatens him, throwing him to the ground and telling him that she can ruin his marriage if he follows her again. After that, she asks the professor for a favor as she has some trash bags she wants to dispose of and doesn't know how. Back at home, we see Shio cleaning the place, but when she tries to open the door where the bags are, she can't, so she continues cleaning the rest. She keeps trying to do the chores, but as she fails, she becomes frustrated and falls asleep, where she dreams of someone with a scratched face, who tells her that they will come for her. Meanwhile, Satu is returning home and sees the person distributing flyers of Shio, so she ends up taking pictures of them. Then she arrives in her home and sees Shio sleeping on the floor, and she reminds her not to attempt to go outside as it's dangerous, closing the door. They then play pretend marriage, and Shio says her vows and kisses the protagonist's forehead. Once the little girl falls asleep, we see our protagonist thinking that the little girl is hers and her family doesn't matter, while burning the poster with her picture. Meanwhile, the professor was burning the trash bags that Satu had given him while thinking about the disgusting contents. The next day at our protagonist's workplace, Mitsubishi arrives to work there, and when the manager touches him, he becomes very uncomfortable. Satu takes him to the break room to talk with him, and there he confesses that he feels disgusted when an older woman touches him. After their conversation, the protagonist leaves, and it's revealed that he feels something for little Shio, losing control of himself. Later, we see Shoko saying goodbye to our protagonist because she's going out to have fun with a guy. On the other hand, outside a store, we see the guy with more copies of Shio's poster, but he ends up colliding with some guys who beat him up while he repeats the phrase that the little girl says when playing pretend marriage. Shoko passes by the place but runs away in fear. Suddenly, Mitsubishi arrives and realizes that it's the guy with Shio's flyers, so he helps him and takes him to the restaurant. At that moment, Satu sees him with her friend and decides to help. While they are with him, the protagonist's friends have to leave, and at that moment, the guy starts repeating the phrase of Shio again, which scares our protagonist, who ends up tripping and making a metal bar fall from a cupboard. She then proceeds to hold it, thinking that no one can come between the little girl and her, giving the impression that she might hit the guy. Chapter 3. At the protagonist's house, Shio starts to worry because Satu hasn't returned, so she tries to open the door to leave the house when suddenly, a ghost appears behind her saying it will guide her. Meanwhile, Satu is about to hit the guy while at the same time, the little girl is desperately looking for her. Just then, our protagonist hears the sound of the door and quickly hides the bar. Mitsubishi enters and is glad to see that the guy woke up, so they offer to take him home, but he thanks them, apologizes for the trouble, and leaves. On the other hand, Satu walks down the street back to her house, thinking that she can't control her emotions and doesn't understand these new feelings. She has killed before, but this is different, like a warning sign, something much more bitter. Finally, she realizes that it's jealousy, which makes her very happy because she feels that it's love. Suddenly, a couple of guys interrupt her, inviting her to go out, but she refuses as someone is waiting for her at home. Outside her house, Satu contemplates killing anyone who interferes with her path, but when she reaches the door, she notices that it's already open, and Shio is not home. So she starts to panic and goes out to look for her. On the other side, the blue-haired guy remembers how he gave Shio to a woman to take care of her, and as soon as he closes his door, a distorted person tells him that he won't escape from him, ending the flashback feeling bad and shouting that he won't stop until he finds her. Somewhere else, Shio is scared in a street corner crying because she doesn't want to be alone. Then she sees the ghost with a covered face and it guides her on where to go, but she realizes she's following a spirit, and when she asks who it is, the ghost only mentions has been around before. The ghost was about to take her hand while the little girl felt a nostalgic aura. However, Mitsubishi appears out of nowhere and takes her hand. He starts feeling the warmth of her hands, her innocent gaze, and thinks about how cute she is. Without hesitation, he tells her that he needs her to kiss him and heal his wounds, so he takes her to a bench in a park. The little girl starts saying things to help him get better, and then he breaks into tears, saying that when she talks to him, he feels very happy and that she makes him feel purified, grateful to have found her. Out of nowhere, Shio starts crying too, saying she misses Satu. So seeing that her family hasn't found her yet, Mitsubishi tells her to stay at his house while he goes to get Satu. But the more he holds her hand, the stronger his desire for her becomes. On his way to take her with him, Mitsubishi receives a blow from the two guys he faced earlier to save the blue-haired guy, and they start beating him up while Shio, frightened, curls up and starts having flashes of memories where she saw red, until the ghost appears behind her. Chapter 4. Upon seeing the ghost, Shio asks for help, but it tells her that she should have never let go of her mother's hand, but this time it will forgive her. Then approaches Shio's face, causing her to scream. The blue-haired guy hears the scream and desperately shouts, asking, "Where are you?" The other guys notice the presence of the girl and plan to call the guy who's looking for her so they can beat him up again. Just then, Satu finds them and each one of them. After this, Satu takes the unconscious girl, thinking about how warm her arms feel. When Shio wakes up at home, she sees Satu worried about her, so she ends up hugging her. Shio starts crying and apologizing for breaking her promise not to leave the house. That's when the protagonist tells her that she will never leave her alone and that she will build a castle so that they can always be happy, and that no matter how late it is, she will always come back. Later, Satu is thinking that it was all her fault and that love is difficult. She remembers a scene where apparently her aunt is beaten, but she smiles, saying it's okay, and that after all, that's love. She then enters a room with a toolbox, saying that nothing will be the same. The next day, we see the protagonist making Shio's favorite breakfast and asking if she talked to anyone else yesterday, to which Shio shakes her head. This makes Satu think that maybe something happened to her that caused her memory to be erased. Later, we see the protagonist leaving the house, saying she will be back as quickly as possible and locking the door from the outside. In class later, Satu checks her bank account and sees that it's now more beneficial. Her two classmates approached, teasing her about dating Kitamikawa, but our protagonist denies it with a smile. They then talk about Segu's aunt, and she tells them they don't talk much at home. Hours later, the teacher is trying to call Segu's house, but without success, which makes him think that his aunt might be in the garbage bags. He starts getting excited, and his wicked side comes out while he looks at Segu's picture. Then in the halls of the protagonist's workplace, Shoko tells Satu to be careful because they found some guys injured in the park, and that's why they will close the workplace early. When they arrive where the others are, Matori, the supervisor, tells all the girls that since it's payday, everyone must be punctual. They ask Satu why she does so much extra work, and she replies that she has a dream to fulfill. On the other hand, Mitsubishi took the day off and is at home, thinking about the relationship between Satu and Shio, wondering why she took her away the previous night. Back at the protagonist's house, Shio keeps saying, while drawing something in her wardrobe until Satu arrives and they both take a shower, have dinner, and feel good with each other. After that, Satu washes the dishes and puts the little girl to bed. Then we see the protagonist cleaning the blood from a room in the house. When finished, we see that Shio painted the ghostly woman on her wardrobe. Chapter 5. In the morning, both have breakfast, but Shio stops, thinking about the ghostly woman. At the restaurant, Seiku's co-worker tells her that she's acting really strange. Then she interrupts her thoughts by complimenting her bag and reminding her that it's the first time they're working together. Throughout the workday, Satu couldn't stop thinking about the girl as she seemed really down. Then, a young man yells because he spilled his drink and Satu's co-worker doesn't know what to do. Our protagonist comes to the rescue and helps calm the customer down. Later that same day, her co-worker thanks Satu for helping and admires her, discovering that this girl has been checking her locker. She also confesses that she bought exactly the same things as Satu. Then she insists on knowing her real address because she wants to be just like her. Satu feels pressured and on impulse kisses this girl, telling her that she's very cute and that she loves her. This leaves her co-worker trembling and saying that there's no way anyone could love her. That's why she's trying to be like Satu. Satu tells her that she's perfect just the way she is and that she shouldn't pretend to be someone else. The girl cries and Satu takes the opportunity to tell her never to go through her things again because it bothers her. After this, Satu runs home because she regrets kissing her co-worker and wants to be with Shio. When she arrives, she finds the little girl curled up on the floor. On the other hand, Shoko goes to Mitsuboshi's house to visit him, and while waiting outside his room, she leans against the door and ends up entering. Once there, she sees the thousands of photos he has of Shio. Meanwhile, at Seiryu's house, she starts losing control when the little girl confesses that she did talk to someone else that night. In Mitsuboshi's room, his coworker accidentally steps on a photo of the girl, and he yells at her not to step on his angel. He proceeds to tell her that this girl is the one who purifies him. Shoko, thinking he's crazy, tries to leave, but Mitsubishi asks her about Satu and her family. She replies that she lives with her aunt, but he tells her that he saw her taking Shio, so he thinks she has her kid. He asks for help, but when he corners her against a wall, she gets scared and runs away. At Siku's house, she wants to confess her crime to Shio, but stops, thinking she might lose her. However, she pushes herself to tell her that she broke her promise, as she told someone else that she loved them, even though it's not true, and that she only loves Shio. She feels that she betrayed her, but Shio tells her not to cry, that she loves her too, and she forgives her because she knows everything she does is for her. Both start crying and forgiving each other for breaking their promises. Meanwhile, in her thoughts, Satu says that she will never confess the other thing she did because, to her, it's not a crime, but a display of love. Chapter 6. Shoko stays looking at the ad with Shio when suddenly the hooded boy appears and asks her if she saw the girl in the ads. She denies it, so the boy turns around to leave, but she reacts and tells him to wait. However, when the boy turns back, she faints. At Mitsubishi's house, his mother excuses him, saying he doesn't want to see anyone. So Satu brings him his schoolwork and tells him she hopes he'll recover. Meanwhile, the boy is spying and sees how Satu gives him a book. Once the protagonist is gone, his mother gives him the book and he thanks her, locking himself in his room again. There he starts flipping through the pages until he reads a message from Satu saying that she'll let him see Shio. This is because the little girl told her about him. At school, Satu's teacher keeps thinking about what happened to Satu's aunt, so he decides to search for evidence to accuse her, and that makes him happy. Later at the restaurant, the manager mentions to Satu and Shoko that it seems Mitsubishi won't come back, and Satu replies that she'll keep trying to convince him. But then she remembers that their other coworker hasn't shown up to work at the same time, and Satu tells Shoko that she can't do anything about her. So the manager leaves, saying that talking about them is pointless if they're not there. After she leaves, Shifoko asks the protagonist about her boyfriend, but she tells her that she'll meet him someday. They then go to work as if nothing happened. After work, Shoko receives a call from her mother, but she lies, saying she's at the library with some friends. After hanging up, she sees some guys and remembers how she used to have fun with Satu and how Satu told her that if she found someone special, she'd stop playing with boys. After that, we see how Shoko arrives at a park and finds the hooded boy sleeping under a bench, so she wakes him up, but she gets scared and tries to escape until she offers him something to eat. As the boy eats, the girl sees the posters with Shio's photo and asks him what his relationship is with that girl. He tells her that Shio is his moon and starts to remember what happened. We find out that his name is Asahi, Shio's brother. This family lived with an alcoholic and a father until the boy planned the escape of his mother with a little girl, as he would stay at home with his father so he wouldn't look for them. And so 5 years pass, with Asahi enduring many things from his father, until one day he finds him lifeless on the floor, which makes him happy because the torture was over. So he runs away thinking that they could finally be together. But when he arrives where his mother was hiding, he finds her alone, and obviously he asks where his sister is, but she tells him that she's gone. Back to the present, the boy has a panic attack from remembering the past, so he decides to leave, but before doing so, he tells Shoko that if she finds her, she should tell him immediately before it's too late. Then Shoko's mother calls again, but she doesn't answer because she stays thinking that Asahi and Satu make a great effort for the people they love. The next day, Satu meets Shoko to go out together since it's been a while since they did it. However, they had a great time during their outing. Later, they arrive at a cafe and Shoko, determined but scared, asks her if her boyfriend is fake, telling her that she sensed her discomfort when they talked about him the first time. She also says that she knows she's lying and wants to know what's going on with her because she's worried she might be involved in strange things since she's her best friend. However, the protagonist tells her that she doesn't want to involve her because she's a good girl. Then the girl starts thinking that Satu pushed her away and that she might lose her. So when Satu is about to leave, Shoko holds her hand and tells her that no matter what happens, she'll accept it. But she wants to know the truth. That's when Satu thanks her for her honesty and decides to tell her the truth, but she thinks it would be better to do it at her house, so they head to Satu's house. On the other hand, we see Katamikoa spying on them while recording everything with his phone. Chapter 7. This is the story of Satu, an orphan who never experienced love and, in the process of searching for it, ended up being hurt. As time passed, she finally found Shio, to whom she gave her love. However, her only family told her that it wasn't love and that she wouldn't forgive her for that. Angry because her way of loving was criticized, she killed her aunt. Of course, all of this was just a theory from the professor, who believes it is not far from reality. As the girls are on their way to Seiku's house, Shoko thinks about how happy she is to have the protagonist's company, which helps her forget negative thoughts. Satu feels the same way and thanks Shoko for being a good friend. Mitsubishi receives a message from Shoko saying she will go to Setu's house. But when they arrive, they notice that there are police officers at the door, and the professor is spying on them from the corner. Satu tells them they can't enter, but seeing that the police officers won't leave, she reluctantly allows them inside. The professor is happy to see the protagonist's reaction when they discover what she's hiding inside her apartment. Satu throws the keys on the floor and knocks twice, saying it's her. Suddenly, the doors open and her aunt comes out, surprising everyone. The police tell her they knocked several times, but nobody answered. However, the aunt apologizes, saying that she probably didn't hear them. The police insist on entering the place due to some complaints they received, so the aunt has no choice but to accept and invites them all inside. Once inside the house, the police don't find anything dangerous. However, they notice a locked room, so they ask her to open it, but the aunt refuses, saying it's a room that smells terrible because it's full of garbage. The police find it suspicious, so they decide to force it open, finally revealing all the trash inside. After a while, the police leave, asking them to clean up the room because it smells really bad, Then the aunt starts behaving strangely, telling Mitsubishi that being a police officer must be tough and proceeding to hug him, saying things he was actually thinking about, like how he wanted to be a police officer when he was a child, but that he still feels lonely. The intensity of the scene gradually increases. The police officer tries to push her away, but the aunt tells him to do whatever he wants with her and to never leave her. Suddenly, his fellow police officer stops her and both of them leave, but the aunt tells Mitsubishi to find her if he's ever feeling lonely. Then she returns to the house and asks Satu's friend if she also feels lonely. However, the protagonist interferes and takes her friend out of her house. On the street, Shoko stops her and tells her that her aunt behaved very strangely. Seiko explains that her aunt believes that love is about pleasing others, so she's willing to let others do whatever they want to her. She asks Shoko if she still wants to be her friend, knowing all of this, to which Shoko accepts, of course. However, after a moment of silence, Satu tells her to forget everything and just remain friends at work. Shoko stays on the street and starts crying, thinking she lost the friendship of the protagonist. Before reaching her apartment on the 305th floor, Satu throws the keys, stands up, and tells the professor to stop stalking her and to return home like a good boy so that his wife will reward him. She adds that she won't give him candy ever again if he behaves that way. After that, we see how the protagonist goes up a few more floors and arrives at room 1208, where Shio is waiting for her with a smile. This makes Satu's expression change, and she smiles too. Finally, she asks the little girl if she knows what a friend is, to which Shio says no, and Satu replies that she doesn't know either. Chapter 8. Let's go back to the past and see Satu entering room number 1208, telling the owner that the place is very clean. She thanks him for the shower and the shirt he gave her, even though it's a little big. Then she tells him she'll return the money, and that he can also ask her for favors. However, the person asks her to be his muse for his art. The guy starts drawing her, and Satu asks him if he really doesn't want to do it, but he refuses and asks her about her hobbies, dreams, etc. The next day, the guy keeps drawing while Satu is in the same chair as the night before, posing for him. At the end of the day, he gives her money, but she refuses to take it since it was a token of gratitude for letting her enter his house. And now that she's no longer his model, she won't come back. Days pass, and Satu spends her time posing for his painting. Suddenly, on a rainy night, the protagonist arrives at the person's house with Shio in her arms and asks if they can come in. He lets them enter the room where he was painting the picture. Seigo asks for a towel to bathe the girl, but apparently the guy doesn't like the idea because he dropped his painting on the way. While the protagonist is in the bathroom, the person thinks she's acting strange, that she has changed, and that he prefers her incomplete or crying. That's why he approaches Shio, and when he's about to grab her by the neck, the girl appears behind him and hits him with a chair and a knife. After finishing him, Satu thanks her, as she met love thanks to him and discovered how far she can go for someone she loves. We return to the present and we see Mitsubishi running scared in the street because of Shoko, who was at Seiku's house thinking it's dangerous, or that he could fall in love with Shio. However, he falls and thinks it might all be a trap set by the protagonist. At that moment, he receives a message from his mom, who is very worried about him, and he regrets behaving strangely, promising to become normal. Then a woman with her daughter interrupts his thoughts, and he sees the monster that torments him on the woman's face. He starts running scared until he sees Shio's picture and begins to calm down. However, Satu appears behind him, interrupting his thoughts, and asks him if he wants to see Shio. On the other hand, while Shoko is crying on a bench, she is seen by Asahi, who approaches her and asks why she's crying, to which she asks how he knew since he didn't even see her. We go back to the protagonist, who is telling Mitsubishi that Shio is happy, but there's someone who wants to destroy that happiness. Therefore, she needs his help to get rid of that person. But Mitsubishi yells at her that he promised to be a normal person, wanting to change his life and not have those thoughts. However, Satu throws in one of Shio's socks, bringing back those feelings inside him, and he ends up accepting to help her. Meanwhile, Shoko cries and tells Asahi that she turned her back on Satu by saying those things about her aunt, and now she's sure she won't have her friendship anymore. However, the boy tells her she was brave and not to try to erase herself because she seems like a good girl and an example for him. Shoko blushes and tells him it's the other way around, that he's the one making a great effort to find his sister. On the other hand, Satu and Mitsubishi went to a restaurant to discuss what to do with the person who intends to harm Shio. Then the protagonist tells him to take him far from there and make him disappear. Mitsubishi asks her why she doesn't try to have a normal life, but she just smiles and says she'll do everything to protect the little girl from such a dirty world. There he asks her what she gains by helping her, to which Satu tells him that he'll be able to see the angel Shio and, if possible, she'll allow him to touch her. Meanwhile, Shoko receives a cupcake from Asahi to eat, but at that moment, he receives a call that tells him they have clues about Shio's whereabouts. Chapter 9. Sometime later, we see Asahi on a bridge waiting for Mitsubishi, who, upon arriving, tells him where he can find Shio. However, Asahi asks for proof, so the blonde guy gives him Shio's tie. Mitsubishi tells him that if she is far away, it's because someone doesn't want her to be found and his chances of finding her are in another city. Asahi thinks it makes sense, but still, something stops him. So he asks the guy how he recognized him when he didn't even look at his face, and that he feels he's a shady guy. Suddenly, Mitsubishi lunges at Asahi and tells him that he's not the same as the dirty woman who touched him. However, Asahi defends himself, grabs the tie, and leaves the place, but halfway there, he realizes that he may be the key to finding Shio. So he turns back, but Mitsubishi is no longer there. That same night, Shoko meets Asahi in the park and asks him if he made any progress, but he tells her no, that the blonde guy who contacted him didn't give him more information. Then Shoko deduces that it was Mitsubishi, but he denies knowing him, so Asahi says goodbye and thanks her, even though he won't see her again. However, Shoko stops him, telling him that she knows he's in a lot of pain and that he should take care of himself, that he can't live without happiness, to which Asahi responds that he must retrieve Shio for that. Suddenly, she hugs him and tells him that she's sorry and he's a great person and that he shouldn't give up. To change the subject, she tells him they should exchange numbers and that he should remember that there will always be a light at the end of the day. Then she smiles at him, steals a kiss, and tells him she wishes he were her prince. Now we see Mitsubishi talking on the phone on the street, saying that he doesn't know if the blue-haired guy believed him and that he hopes he arrives. He also asks when he will be able to see Shio to purify her. After this, he leaves, but someone is spying on him. At the station, we see Satu observing Asahi heading to take the train, thinking that she must eliminate anyone who tries to get in their way, as she's willing to do anything for love. After that, she remembers it's her anniversary with Shio, so she buys food and a gift. Once she gets home, the girl receives her and asks about the bag she's carrying, so Seiku offers her the cupcakes and tells her they'll spend the whole day together. The girl happily eats all the cupcakes, while Satu thinks she must protect her no matter what because she wants to be by her side forever. Afterward, Shio tells her she wants to make cupcakes for her in the future. This makes Satu realize that she never thought about the future, but she's interrupted by the girl who tells her they should get married to be together forever. Then Satu shows her the ring she had bought, making the little girl happy. Later, the protagonist tells her she has to go out and will be back soon, but Shio hugs her so tightly that she takes her outside the apartment. Their moment of happiness is interrupted when they hear a click, and it turns out Shoko had taken a picture of them. Satu gets angry and forces her back into the apartment, demanding the phone's password to delete the photo. Then, she takes her to another room, and they argue about the situation. However, Shoko tells her that she cares about her a lot, and even if she were the devil, she would help her, ending the conversation and leaving the room. However, before leaving, she's grabbed from behind, and the protagonist tells her she doesn't believe her lie that she won't tell anyone about Shio, covering her mouth and her with a knife. Finally, she goes to the room where Shio was, and the little girl sees her covered in blood. However, Shio only asks Satu if she did all of that for her. On the other hand, it is shown that Shoko did send the photo to Asahi, who is surprised to see it. Chapter 10. We see Satu lying in the living room while Shio consoles her until she realizes that our protagonist is exhausted, so she sets out to make dinner for her. Then we see a scene from the past where her mother is thrown against a window by her father, later cleaning up the mess he caused. Meanwhile, Shio also starts cleaning, but she sees a red stain on the floor, although she only cleans it. After finishing, she remembers her mother telling her she had an outfit she wanted her to wear on her wedding day, and walking her down the aisle was her big dream. Suddenly, a man enters and tells her to sell that dress, causing her mother to lose her sanity, thinking she has to endure it until her death, but it's okay. After that, we see the little girl taking Satu's dirty underwear to wash, and when she opens the washing machine, she finds the bloodstained clothes, but she ignores it and leaves the other clothes there. Suddenly, we switch to Shio's memory, where she gives her mother a flower, but she scolds her, saying she shouldn't have left the house, that she could get lost. Then the girl apologizes with tears in her eyes, but her mother starts crying and apologizes for treating her that way. The little girl tells her the pain will pass, but seeing her mother suffer, she tells her they should go out on the street, that as long as they are together, everything will be fine. Once they are outside, Shio sees a jar that can be repaired, so she decides to go get it, but a car is coming at full speed at the same time. Suddenly, the scene changes where we see her mother shouting at her, and the girl insists on wanting to fix her jar. The mother slaps her, but she realizes that she has become a monster and tells her to go outside again. Once they are on the street, she abandons her under the rain, telling her she doesn't need her anymore and that she should have done it a long time ago. After remembering this while looking at the drawing on the wall, she realizes that what she drew was her mother, so she approaches Satu and tells her they should be together, that they shouldn't abandon each other. Suddenly, the girl wakes up and instantly tells her that she wants to go live on an island, but Shio doesn't like the idea, as it would mean abandoning the castle where they swore to live. So the girl brings her food and tells her to eat and smile as she did before. Satu is surprised and tells her they will always be together, but the castle they live in is crumbling, and it's best to leave together, as she will protect her from everything. However, Shio tells her that she hides many secrets, that she doesn't love her, to which Satu responds that she loves her very much but that there are things she doesn't need to know. That's why the girl angrily goes to her room, but the protagonist tells her from outside the room that she will always take care of her and that the castle will not crumble. However, Shio tells her she hates her and doesn't need her anymore. This makes Satu's whole world fall apart as she remembers how she met the little girl. One rainy night, the protagonist saw how Shio's mother left her on the street, so she asks the girl if she's not going to follow her, but she says no, as her heart would be completely broken if she did. Then Satu tells her that there are many ways to express love, so Shio turns around and sees that Satu's jar is empty, so she hugs her and wishes her to find happiness. Finally, Shio leaves the room and tells her she wants to do everything for her, that they will fight together, and that if at any moment they die or make mistakes, they'll be together. This is how Satu feels better and tells her that she lied, hurt, and stole from people, and that's why they have to leave that place, thanking her for being with her through all of this. Later, Shio looks at the apartment and remembers the beautiful time she spent there with Satu, and even though she now remembers her mother, she no longer needs her because she has the protagonist now. However, someone behind her tells her not to say that. Chapter 11. We see Asahi walking with a baseball bat, thinking that he has endured many things and that finally a door has opened that he never thought would open. Then he calls Shoko's number, but as she doesn't answer, he decides to send her the photo he took to Mitsubishi, who, upon seeing it, doesn't hesitate to run to Seiju's house, but ends up being hit by Asahi. When Mitsubishi wakes up, the blue-haired boy asks him about the girl in the photo and tells him that by her expression, he knows he was an accomplice. Mitsubishi confesses that Seiyu has the girl and that she is locked up, protecting her from danger. He proposes that they work together to get Shio back, but Asahi refuses, saying he would never work with him because he smells like a dirty adult. Then asks for Seiju's address, but Mitsubishi resists, so the blue-haired boy threatens him and ends up giving him Seiju's address. Meanwhile, Satu remembers how she killed Shoko and feels some remorse, but she also remembers that Shio told her they will be together no matter what. After that, she leaves the apartment and goes to her aunt. She recalls her past and how she learned what love was when her aunt brought men to the house to beat her, but she told her it was okay. That was love. Then Satu tells her that she killed a person for someone she loves and that they will leave far away. The aunt is not scared and tells her that she met men who did the same and she loved them anyway. However, the protagonist reproaches her that it shouldn't have been that way, that she should have shown her love. But now, thanks to Shio, she truly knows what real love is, and that is priceless. The aunt tells her she won't criticize her, but she is still a child and should not take responsibility for others, and also that she will always be alone because she seeks love as a child. But Satu tells her that she knows nothing about love, as she is just a dirty adult. Finally, her aunt agrees to help her with whatever she needs. At the restaurant where Satu works, Mitsubishi arrives and is greeted by Mitsuri, who is glad to see him as they missed him a lot. She tells him that they still can't locate Shoko, but he says he knows nothing about her. Mitsuri leaves and he starts looking through the papers for information about Satu. After searching for a while, he finds her file, takes a photo of it, and runs out of the place. In the garage of the building, Satu and Shio are waiting for the protagonist's aunt, who shows up in a minivan, finally meeting the love of the girl. Then they go to the supermarket, buy everything they need to set on fire the place where those crimes happened, and also ask an acquaintance for fake passports. Finally, Satu throws the phone into a truck, and it drives away with it. Asahi calls Shoko again with no success while waiting for Mitsubishi, who is on his way to Satu's apartment, not wanting to go with the blue-haired boy. Finally, he arrives at the apartment but finds out it's Satu's aunt's place. Seeing the door open, he entered without hesitation, as he desperately wanted to see the girl. However, the aunt appears behind him and asks if he's in need of love, getting closer slowly as the boy screams. In the protagonist's apartment, Satu and Shio are making one last promise before leaving the place. After the little girl says her vows, both put on their rings and share a kiss. Chapter 12. In the protagonist's apartment, we see Shio and Satu bathing and imagining their new castle, promising to forget everything that happened. Meanwhile, in the other apartment, the aunt starts to touch Mitsubishi inappropriately. Back with the protagonist, she enters a room where Shoko's body is sitting on a chair. Then she starts dressing her up and leaves her ring beside her friend's body. At that moment, Shio calls her, saying that her aunt has arrived. As she goes out, she meets her aunt, who brought money in a bag. After this, the girls get ready to leave the apartment. On the other hand, Asahi calls Mitsubishi, who manages to reach and answer the phone. The blonde boy tells him that he was again in Satu's apartment and gives him the room number. When the girls manage to leave the apartment, the protagonist goes to withdraw money and realizes that she forgot the ring. Then Shio tells her to go back and get it because there's still time. Meanwhile, Asahi is on his way to the protagonist's apartment, but not to room 308 as Mitsubishi told him, but to 1208 as he saw the room number in the photo that Shoko sent him. So he calls Mitsubishi and tells him that he doesn't care what happens to him since he lied about this. Shio and Satu return to the apartment to retrieve the ring, Once they have it, they take the elevator down while the aunt starts to pour gasoline all over the floor where the protagonist lived and finally sets it on fire. As they go down to the ground floor, they meet Asahi, who yells at them to give him back his sister. But they run away and go up to the third floor, where they find Mitsubishi tied up on the floor. He wants to go after the girl, but they immediately leave, and as he tries to follow them, he trips and falls to the ground while the girls escape. Asahi goes to look for them on the floor where they lived, but it's on fire. However, he doesn't hesitate to go to his room. In his search, unfortunately, he comes across Shoko's body, leaving him in shock. After that, he runs out of there and realizes they went up to the rooftop, so he pursues them and finally reaches Satu. She tries to escape, but he hits her with a baseball bat and tells Shio they have to leave. The girl refuses and he tells her that the protagonist is her friend, but she responds that she already knows, and although he tells her that her mother is waiting for her, she doesn't want to go with him. The boy is about the protagonist again, but Shio opposes it. Then Asahi tells her that her mother didn't abandon her because she didn't need her anymore, but she realized she was becoming a bad person, but she still loves her. He also remembers that it was her mother who killed her father with poison and sacrificed herself to protect them. That's why he can't blame her, as she was also a victim. However, Shio says she thanks her mother for freeing her from an unhappy life, but now she only needs Satu. Then both of them run away and reach the rooftop. The two girls express how much they love each other and that the best thing is to be together. Shio tells the protagonist that when her mother abandoned her, she was very sad, but when she arrived, everything became happy. Both hug each other and proceed to jump together. The girls start fighting and begin to remember everything they experienced in their world. Finally, Satu tells Shio that she hopes she will love her again when they are reborn. The next day, the news shows how Satu's aunt is blamed for the entire fire incident. The teacher is captured as an accomplice, and only Shoko and Satu are reported as. On the other hand, Asahi arrives at the hospital with flowers for Shio. Upon entering her room, he proposes that they live together, but she tells him that her happiness is within her and that she doesn't need to live with anyone, imagining Satu.